They said I was special, then handed me a mop on their spaceship. Cosmic recruitment. Morgan Reed wiped grimy hands on his coveralls and slid out from under the ancient pickup truck. Another 14-hour day at Pete's Auto. Shop was ending the same as all others, alone, exhausted, and with nothing but a microwave dinner waiting at his empty apartment. At 32, his life had settled into a predictable rhythm of fixing other people's vehicles, while his own dreams collected dust. "Lock up when you're done," Pete called, not waiting for a response before his truck rumbled away. Morgan sighed, gathering his tools. The flickering fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting his shadow against the oil-stained concrete. He'd always been good with his hands, with understanding how things worked and fixing what was broken. If only people were as straightforward as engines. The light above him intensified suddenly, transitioning from the sickly yellow of the shop lights to a brilliant, pulsing blue. Morgan looked up, confusion turning to disbelief as the ceiling seemed to dissolve. His wrench clattered to the floor as weightlessness claimed him, tools floating upward as gravity released its hold. "What the?" His protest died in his throat as consciousness slipped away. Morgan awoke to the gentle hum of machinery unlike anything he'd heard before. He was lying on a surface that conformed perfectly to his body, in a room bathed in soft, ambient light that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Everything was pristine, curved, and utterly alien. "The subject has regained consciousness," announced a melodic voice. Morgan bolted upright, his heart hammering. 3 figures stood at the foot of his bed, dais. They were tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like mother-of-pearl under their flowing silver garments. Their features were humanoid, but refined to an almost painful perfection. High cheekbones, large almond-shaped eyes in shades of violet and indigo, and delicate 4-fingered hands. "What is this? Who are you people?" Morgan demanded, surprised by the steadiness in his voice, despite his terror. The tallest of the 3 stepped forward. "I am Director Thelian of the Vesperian science vessel Stellaris. You have been selected, Morgan Reed of Earth, because you possess a unique resonance signature that is compatible with our systems." Morgan blinked. "You know my name?" "We know many things," said the female alien to Thelian's left. "I am Navigator Elise. Your planet has been under observation for some time." The third alien, slightly shorter but with an air of contained energy, studied a translucent tablet. The compatibility is even stronger than projected. A perfect match. "Match for what?" Morgan asked, suspicion replacing fear. "Some kind of experiment?" Director Thelian made a gesture that might have been a smile. "For a position of great importance, aboard our vessel, you have been chosen to maintain the critical systems of the Stellaris." Morgan's mind raced. Critical systems? Was he being recruited as some kind of engineer for an alien spacecraft? Despite the absurdity, a spark of excitement kindled within him. "Your neural patterns resonate perfectly with our bioadaptive maintenance networks," continued Thelian. "Such compatibility is exceedingly rare." "So, you need me to fix your ship?" Morgan asked cautiously. "To maintain it," corrected the third alien. "I am Technical Overseer Jorvan. You will work under my supervision." Navigator Elise approached with a device resembling a silver wand. "This is your primary tool. It interfaces with all shipboard systems requiring attention." Morgan accepted it gingerly, surprised by its lightweight feel. As his fingers closed around it, the wand illuminated with a soft blue glow, and somehow, impossibly, he understood its function. "It's some kind of multi-tool?" he guessed. "More precisely, it is a quantum resonance manipulator," said Jorvan. "But your comprehension is sufficient for now." Director Thelian gestured, and a door Morgan hadn't noticed before slid open silently. "You will be shown to your quarters, and tomorrow your duties will commence. The Stellaris faces a critical research mission, and our systems must operate at peak efficiency." As Morgan followed Elise through the doorway into a corridor of gleaming, silver and soft light, The reality of his situation began to sink in. He'd been abducted, yes, but also recruited. For what exactly, he wasn't yet sure, but for the first time in years, Morgan Reed felt something long dormant stirring within him. Purpose. Diplomatic spillage, Morgan's quarters aboard the Stellaris, resembled a minimalist hotel room designed by someone who'd only heard vague descriptions of human living spaces. The bed molded to his body with unsettling precision, and the temperature adjusted automatically to his comfort level. Despite these luxuries, sleep eluded him as questions raced through his mind. By the time the ambient lighting gradually brightened to simulate dawn, he had barely rested. A soft chime signaled the arrival of Technical Overseer Jorvan, who regarded Morgan with what might have been impatience. It was difficult to read Vesperian. Expressions. Your orientation begins now, Jorvan stated. The Stellaris requires attention in Section 14. Morgan followed Jorvan through corridors that seemed to subtly shift and realign themselves. Crew members, all Vesperians with their pearlescent skin and fluid movements, regarded him with expressions ranging from curiosity to disdain. What exactly will I be doing? Morgan asked as they entered a utility chamber filled with equipment that defied easy categorization. Jorvan gestured to a wall panel that slid open to reveal what looked suspiciously like cleaning supplies. You will maintain optimal functionality of all ship systems and address anomalies as they occur. Morgan stared at the collection of tools and substances. Wait, am I a janitor? Janitor is imprecise. You are a resonance maintenance technician, Jorvan corrected, handing Morgan what resembled a mop with a glowing head. Your neural patterns interface directly with our bioadaptive systems. This is a rare compatibility. Morgan's grand visions of alien engineering crumbled. You kidnapped me from Earth to clean your spaceship? We relocated you to fulfill your optimal function, Jorvan said, seemingly puzzled by Morgan's reaction. Many would consider this an honor. Before Morgan could respond, an alarm pulsed through the chamber, and Jorvan consulted his tablet. A priority situation in the diplomatic quarter. Your immediate attention is required. 15 minutes later, Morgan stood outside an ornate doorway, listening to raised voices within. Jorvan had explained that a delegation from a neighboring system was meeting with Vesperian officials, and an environmental disruption needed addressing. Taking a deep breath, Morgan entered to find a scene of barely contained chaos. A viscous blue substance dripped from the ceiling onto an elaborate table where several Vesperians and bulkier ridge-headed aliens sat in obvious discomfort. The atmosphere crackled with tension. The maintenance technician announced a familiar voice. Morgan turned to see a Vesperian female wearing a fitted uniform that distinguished her from the flowing robes of the others. Her violet eyes assessed him coolly, her posture radiating authority. Commander Neela, she introduced herself. Address this situation immediately. The Krovian delegation is most displeased. The largest of the ridge-headed aliens, Krovians apparently, rose to his impressive height. This insult will not be forgotten, Commander. First, you refuse our reasonable terms, and now this sabotage? Ambassador Drack, I assure you this is merely a technical malfunction, Commander Nyla replied, her tone measured but with an edge. Morgan immediately recognized his stress. Morgan approached the ceiling leak, studying it while trying to ignore the diplomatic tension. The substance appeared to be flowing from a conduit above the paneling. Excuse me, he interrupted, drawing shocked looks from everyone. Is this substance important, or can I just stop it completely? A moment of stunned silence followed his question. The neural coolant is vital to ship functions, Commander Nyla finally answered, but redirecting it would be acceptable. Morgan nodded, accessing an intuitive understanding of the ship's systems through his quantum manipulator. The coolant's being diverted here because of a blockage somewhere else. If I create a temporary bypass... As he worked, Morgan became aware of Ambassador Drack watching him with interest. Your technician is human, the Krovian asked. A recent addition, Commander Neela confirmed stiffly. Interesting, Drac rumbled. The Vesperian conclave employing humans now? Perhaps your technological superiority isn't as absolute as you claim. Morgan sensed the barb landing as Nyla's posture stiffened further. Inspiration struck him. Actually, Morgan interjected, I was specifically chosen because human neural patterns can interface with Vesperian tech in ways other species can't. He gestured casually with his manipulator, causing it to pulse impressively. Something about our unique evolution. The lie flowed smoothly, and Morgan watched the Krovians exchange uncertain glances. Commander Nyla's expression remained neutral, but he caught a flicker of surprise in her eyes. There, Morgan announced, sealing the bypass. The blue dripping ceased immediately. The coolant's flowing back to the main systems now. Should improve ship efficiency by, at least 15%. This number was completely fabricated, but the Krovians seemed impressed. Ambassador Drac settled back into his seat. Perhaps we have been hasty in our accusations, the ambassador conceded. Let us return to the trade agreement. As the diplomatic discussions resumed, Commander Nyla gestured for Morgan to follow her into the corridor. That was unorthodox, she said once they were alone, her voice lower and less formal. But effective, Morgan shrugged. Sometimes a little improvisation works better than protocol. Indeed. She studied him with new interest. Your file didn't mention diplomatic skills. My file? Morgan raised an eyebrow. What else does it say about me? A ghost of a smile touched her lips. That remains classified, Technician Reed. She turned to leave, then paused. The quantum manipulator doesn't actually interface with human neural patterns, by the way. No, Morgan agreed with a small grin. But they don't know that. Commander. Nyla regarded him for a moment longer. Report to Section 22 after your shift. The gravity modulators require attention. As she walked away, Morgan found himself watching her retreating form with unexpected interest. Perhaps life aboard the Stellaris wouldn't be quite as mundane as he'd feared. Engine room. Confessions. 2 weeks aboard the Stellaris had taught Morgan many things. Vesperian food tasted like metallic seaweed. The ship's layout seemed to reconfigure itself daily. And despite his initial disappointment, his position granted him unique access to every corner of the vessel. Most surprisingly, he'd discovered a knack for ship maintenance that went beyond merely cleaning up messes. Morgan knelt beside a pulsing conduit in the lower engineering deck, his quantum manipulator hovering over a hairline fracture in the casing. The tool responded to his touch with increasing sensitivity, as if adapting to him. The resonance frequency is still off, came a now familiar voice behind him. Morgan didn't need to turn to recognize Commander Nyla. Since the diplomatic incident, their paths had crossed with suspicious frequency. I've got it under control. Clearly, she replied, the subtle sarcasm not lost on him. That's why the tertiary propulsion system is operating at 70% capacity. Morgan stood, wiping his hands on his technician's uniform, a sleek, silver-gray outfit that was surprisingly comfortable. The problem isn't the conduit, it's the distribution matrix. He gestured toward a glowing panel across the chamber. The ship's trying to compensate for energy fluctuations, but the automated systems can't identify the pattern. Nyla approached the panel, her uniform contrasting with the other crew members' flowing garments, more practical, like Morgan's, but with insignia marking her rank. And you can? It's what I did back on Earth, finding patterns in mechanical systems that computers miss. Morgan joined her at the panel. Machines have logic, but they don't have intuition. Nyla studied him with those violet eyes that seemed to see more than Morgan was comfortable revealing. Show me. For the next hour, Morgan explained his theory about the propulsion system's inefficiency. To his surprise, Neela followed his reasoning, occasionally offering insights that revealed her own deep understanding of the ship's engineering. They moved deeper into the engine room, a vast chamber dominated by a pulsing crystalline core that Morgan had learned was the heart of the vessel's faster-than-light capabilities. This connection here, Morgan pointed to a junction where energies converged. If we reroute through the secondary, a sudden tremor shook the ship, throwing both of them off balance. Warning lights pulsed as a klaxon sounded. "Energy surge," Nyla called out, rushing to a control panel. "The core is destabilizing." Morgan watched in alarm as the crystalline structure began to flicker erratically. Crew members evacuated as emergency. Protocols engaged. When a secondary explosion rocked the chamber, Morgan found himself instinctively grabbing Nyla, pulling her away from a collapsing support beam. They tumbled behind a bulkhead as the doors to the engine room sealed automatically, leaving them trapped inside with the increasingly unstable core. "Control room. This is Commander Nyla," she spoke into her communication device. "We are sealed in Section 5 with a Class 3 energy cascade in progress." The response came through with static interference. "Unable to override containment protocols. 30 minutes until critical." Morgan examined the sealed doorway. "They can't get us out?" "Not until the cascade is contained," Nyla replied, her composure remarkable despite the situation. "And if it isn't contained, there won't be much left of this section to evacuate." Morgan's eyes darted between the pulsing core and the engineering panels. "Then we contain it ourselves." Working together, they attempted to stabilize the energy fluctuations. The heat in the chamber increased as the core's protective fields began to fail. After 20 minutes of desperate adjustments, Morgan slumped against a console, sweat beading on his forehead. "It's not working," he admitted. "The system keeps rejecting the corrections." Nyla had discarded her outer uniform jacket in the heat, revealing a simple fitted top beneath. Her usual composure showed cracks as she pushed back damp strands of silver-white hair. There must be a solution. Morgan stared at the core, an idea forming. What if we're overthinking this? On Earth, sometimes the simplest fix is just to reboot. Reboot? Nyla frowned. You can't simply turn off a hyperspace core. Not off, Morgan clarified, moving to the main control panel. But we could force a momentary power cycle through the auxiliary systems. It might reset the cascade. Nyla joined him, their shoulders touching as they bent over the controls. That would require manually overriding 3 separate safety protocols. Can you do it? Morgan asked. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Yes, she answered, but timing will be critical. As they worked, the chamber grew unbearably hot. The situation forced a strange intimacy between them, passing tools, finishing each other's technical thoughts, their hands occasionally brushing as they raced against time. On my mark, Nyla finally said, her finger hovering over the final. Override. 3, 2, 1. The core went dark for a heart-stopping moment, then gradually reignited with a stable, rhythmic pulse. The warning klaxons silenced as emergency lighting returned to normal. Morgan released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. It worked. So it seems, Nyla agreed, a rare smile transforming her features. Your Earth solutions are unconventional, but effective. They stood close, the adrenaline of survival creating a charged moment between them. Morgan became acutely aware of her presence, the subtle scent that reminded him of thunderstorms, the rise and fall of her breathing. Why did they really bring me here, Nyla? Morgan asked quietly. The truth this time. She hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. Your compatibility with our systems is genuine, but there were other candidates. Director Thelian selected you specifically because of your adaptive problem-solving abilities. She looked away. The Stellaris has been experiencing unexplained malfunctions, ones our conventional engineers couldn't resolve. You mean I was brought here to fix problems no one else could solve? Morgan felt a strange mix of pride and lingering resentment. Does that disappoint you? Nyla asked, her gaze returning to his. Morgan considered this. No, he finally admitted. Actually, it's the first thing that's made sense since I got here. The doors slid open as external systems regained control. Crew members rushed in, but for a moment, neither Morgan nor Nyla moved from their position of unexpected proximity. Perhaps, Nyla said softly, there are other things aboard the Stellaris that would benefit from your unique perspective. Her words carried a meaning beyond the technical, and Morgan found himself nodding, suddenly certain that his abduction to the stars had altered the trajectory of his life in ways he was only beginning to understand. Saboteurs, shadow a month into his time aboard the Stellaris, Morgan had earned a reputation. The human maintenance technician was no longer viewed with curiosity or disdain, but with a grudging respect. His quarters had been upgraded, and even Director Thelian had acknowledged his contributions during a ship-wide address. More significant was his evolving relationship with Commander Nyla. Their shared experience in the engine room had created a connection that manifested in late-night discussions in the observatory deck, where the vast sweep of stars provided a backdrop to conversations that ranged from technical ship operations to philosophical differences between their species. Your people value individualism to a fault, Nyla observed one evening, as they sat before the transparent dome that revealed a stunning nebula beyond. It makes you unpredictable. And your people could use a little unpredictability, Morgan countered, leaning closer. Structure has its limits. Nyla's lips curved in what Morgan had learned was amusement. Is that your professional assessment, Technician Reed? Just an observation, Commander. Their eyes met, and Morgan felt the now familiar flutter of attraction that transcended species. The moment lingered until Nyla's communication device chimed. Her expression shifted instantly to concern as she listened to the message. "I'll be there immediately," she responded, rising quickly. "What's happened?" Morgan asked. Nyla hesitated. "The primary navigation system has been compromised. It appears deliberate." "Sabotage?" Morgan stood. "I'm coming with you." "This is a security matter," she began, but Morgan was already walking toward the exit. "And I'm the one who understands the ship's systems better than anyone," he reminded her. "Even you." The navigation center was in disarray when they arrived. Technical Overseer Jorvan was directing a team of specialists while Director Thelian observed with evident concern. "Report," Nyla commanded. Jorvan's typically impassive face showed signs of stress. "Navigation protocols have been rewritten. We've lost control of our trajectory." "Toward what?" Morgan asked, moving to a display panel. "The Krovian defensive perimeter," Director Thelian answered gravely. "If we cross their boundary without authorization, they will consider it an act of aggression." Morgan studied the navigation interface. "Someone's inserted a recursive algorithm. It's regenerating every time your systems try to purge it. Can you counter it?" Nyla asked. "I think so, but I need to trace it to the source." Morgan's fingers moved across the controls with increasing confidence. "This didn't happen randomly. Someone had to input this directly." Director Thelian's gaze sharpened. "Are you suggesting a crew member is responsible?" "I'm suggesting someone with high-level access is responsible," Morgan clarified. "This programming is sophisticated." The implication hung in the air until Jorvan spoke. "Only senior officers have such access." All eyes turned to Nyla. "You can't possibly think I would endanger the Stellaris," she said, her voice level despite the accusation. "Your recent communications with the Krovian delegation were not reported," Jorvan stated, "and your access codes were used to enter the navigation center during the last rest cycle." Morgan watched disbelief and anger cross Nyla's face. "That's ridiculous. I was in my quarters." "Can anyone verify that?" Director Thelian asked. The silence that followed was damning. Morgan saw security officers moving subtly into position around Nyla. "This is a mistake," Morgan interjected. "Nyla wouldn't do this." "Your attachment to Commander Nyla is noted," Jorvan said dismissively. but evidence must be followed. Commander Nyla, you are relieved of duty pending investigation. Director Thelian announced. You will be confined to quarters. Morgan watched helplessly as Nyla was escorted from the navigation center, her expression betraying a momentary vulnerability before her professional mask returned. She met his eyes briefly, a look that conveyed both innocence and resignation. When she was gone, Morgan turned back to the navigation system. I'm still tracing this algorithm. That won't be necessary, Jorvin said. Security will handle the investigation. With all due respect, Overseer, I'm the best chance you have of understanding what happened here. Morgan continued working, his tone making it clear he wouldn't be deterred. Unless you'd prefer to explain to the Krovians why a Vesperian research vessel violated their territory, Director Thelian nodded reluctantly. Proceed, Technician Reed, but report all findings directly to me. For the next 12 hours, Morgan immersed himself in the ship's systems, following digital pathways and uncovering layers of deception. He barely noticed when Navigator Elise brought him sustenance or when crew shifts changed around him. His focus remained absolute until finally he found what he was looking for. The algorithm has a signature, he announced to Director Thelian, when the Vesperian returned to check his progress. It's disguised as Nyla's, but there are inconsistencies. Morgan displayed a complex pattern on the screen. The code was planted by someone mimicking her access protocols, but they made a mistake. What mistake? Thelian asked. They didn't account for human observation, Morgan said with grim satisfaction. Your systems rely on patterns, but I look for anomalies. And I found one, a temporal marker that places the real infiltration at exactly the time Nyla and I were trapped in the engine room during the Cascade event. Director Thelian's eyes widened. She couldn't have been in two places. Exactly. Morgan brought up another display. And I've identified the actual access point. It came from the diplomatic quarter. Understanding dawned on Thelian's face. The Krovian delegation. Not the entire delegation, Morgan corrected. Ambassador Drack specifically. He must have obtained Nyla's codes somehow and used them to sabotage the ship. For what purpose? Morgan had been considering this question for hours. The Stellaris was involved in negotiations that the Krovians found unfavorable. What better way to disrupt those talks than to frame the chief negotiator and force a diplomatic incident? Before Thelian could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Jorvin's voice came through the communication system. Security breach in the diplomatic quarter. The Krovian delegation is attempting to access the main drive systems. Morgan was already moving. They're accelerating their plan. If they gain control of the drive, they could force us into Krovian space within minutes. Security teams are responding, Thelian said, following Morgan into the corridor. They'll be too late. Morgan diverted down a maintenance passage. I can reach the drive control junctions through the service tunnels. That area will be unsafe if the drives are compromised, Thelian warned. Morgan didn't slow his pace. Nyla is still confined. Someone needs to tell her what's happening. I will see to Commander Nyla's release, Thelian promised. Stop the Krovians, Technician Reed. Morgan navigated the narrow service tunnels with practiced ease, his quantum manipulator in hand. He emerged into a dimly lit junction where drive control conduits converged. Ahead, he could see Ambassador Drack and two Krovian guards working at an access panel. Drawing on every bit of knowledge he'd gained about the Stellaris, Morgan accessed a nearby maintenance panel and began rerouting critical systems. If he couldn't stop the Krovians directly, he could at least create obstacles. The lights in the junction flickered as Morgan's adjustments took effect. Ambassador Drack looked up sharply. Find the source of that disruption, he ordered one of the guards. Morgan ducked behind a conduit as the guard approached, considering his options. He was outnumbered and unarmed, except for his maintenance. Tools. But sometimes, he reflected, the simplest solution was the most effective. With a quick adjustment to his quantum manipulator, Morgan created a controlled power surge through the section. The resulting electromagnetic pulse temporarily disabled the Krovians' equipment and disoriented their sensitive auditory organs. Taking advantage of their confusion, Morgan lunged forward, using his manipulator to seal the drive access panel permanently. When the Krovian guard recovered enough to charge him, Morgan sidestepped and used the larger alien's momentum to send him crashing into a bulkhead. "Human," Ambassador Drax snarled, recovering faster than his companions. "Your interference is futile. The Stellaris will still cross into our territory, and the Vesperians will face the consequences of their arrogance." "That's not going to happen," Morgan replied, positioning himself between Drax and the controls. "Your sabotage has been discovered. It's over." The ambassador's ridge-lined face contorted with rage. "Nothing is over until I say it is." He lunged toward Morgan with surprising speed. The fight was brief but brutal. Drax's physical strength outmatched Morgan's, but years of working with heavy machinery had made the human resilient. When Drax slammed him against a control panel, Morgan used his manipulator to release a burst of coolant vapor directly into the ambassador's face. The distraction was enough for Morgan to activate the ship-wide security alert specifically keyed to the junction's location. By the time Vesperian security forces arrived, Morgan had managed to disable the remaining sabotage protocols and secure the Krovian delegation. As the security team led Ambassador Drax and his companions away, Morgan leaned heavily against the wall, nursing what felt like several bruised ribs. His moment of respite was interrupted by approaching footsteps, lighter and more graceful than the security officers. Nyla appeared in the doorway, her uniform restored, and her expression a mixture of relief and something deeper. "Director, Thelian informed me of your discoveries," she said, moving toward him. "You cleared my name." Morgan attempted a casual shrug, wincing at the resulting pain. "I just followed the evidence." "No," Neela countered, stopping before him. "You trusted me when no one else did. That goes beyond evidence." Their eyes met, and the unspoken connection between them seemed to strengthen. Nyla reached out, her fingers gently touching a cut on Morgan's forehead. The gesture was tentative, as if she was still learning the boundaries of appropriate human contact. "You're injured," she observed softly. "I've had worse," Morgan assured her, though the gentle pressure of her touch made his heart race more than the fight had. "What happens now?" Nyla's violet eyes held his. "Now," she said, "we have much to discuss about your future aboard the Stellaris." Celestial bonds. The observation deck was empty, save for Morgan and Neela, the vast panorama of stars stretching before them as the Stellaris continued its journey through space. 2 months had passed since the Krovian incident, bringing significant changes to Morgan's status aboard the vessel. "The uniform suits you," Nyla observed, gesturing to Morgan's new attire. No longer the gray of a maintenance technician, but the silver blue of a systems specialist, complete with insignia denoting his unique position. Morgan adjusted the collar, still unaccustomed to the formal clothing. "It feels strange, not having to carry cleaning supplies everywhere." "You were never just a janitor," Neela reminded him, moving to stand beside him at the transparent dome. "Though your skills in that area were adequate." Morgan smiled at her teasing tone, a side of Neela that only he was privileged to see. "High praise from the commander." "Acting director," she corrected. With Thelian reassigned after the security breach, Nyla had assumed temporary command of the Stellaris. "Acting director," Morgan acknowledged, turning to face her. "Which makes this conversation even more complicated." The air between them shifted, charged with the tension of things unsaid. Since the revelation of the Krovian plot, their relationship had deepened beyond professional respect, yet neither had given voice to the obvious attraction. "The Vesperian conclave has granted your formal petition for citizenship," Neela said, her tone carefully neutral. "You are officially recognized as a resident alien with full rights aboard any Vesperian vessel or settlement." "I saw the notification," Morgan nodded. That's not why I asked you to meet me here. Nyla's gaze remained on the stars. I know. Morgan took a breath, gathering courage. I've been thinking about Earth, about what I left behind. Do you wish to return? Her question was soft, vulnerable in a way few would recognize. That's just it, Morgan said. When I think about what I had there, a job fixing other people's vehicles, an empty apartment, no real connections, I realize I didn't leave much behind at all. He moved closer to her. But here I've found purpose. I've found... He hesitated, then finished simply. More. Nyla finally turned to him, her expression revealing the conflict within. There are protocols regarding relationships between commanding officers and crew members. There are always protocols, Morgan said with a slight smile, but I've never been very good at following rules. I've noticed, Nyla replied, a warmth in her voice that belied her formal stance. Morgan reached out slowly, giving her time to withdraw if she wished, and took her hand. The contact sent a pleasant warmth through him. Her skin was cooler than a human's, with a subtle texture that reminded him of silk. The thing is, he continued, I've traveled across the galaxy and found something I never expected. Someone who sees me for who I really am, not just what I can do. Nyla's fingers intertwined with his, her usual composure softening. The Vesperian philosophy teaches that connections transcending species are rare but valuable. They bring new perspectives, new possibilities. Is that what we have? Possibilities, Morgan asked, drawing her gently closer. We have more than that, Nyla admitted, her free hand rising to touch his face in that now familiar gesture of affection. We have certainty. At least I do. Morgan's heart raced as the distance between them diminished. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Their first kiss was tentative, a gentle exploration of differences and similarities. Nyla's lips were cool against his, but the sensation was intoxicating. When they finally separated, her violet eyes were wide with wonder. That was, she began. Just the beginning, Morgan finished, smiling. A discreet chime interrupted the moment. Nyla reluctantly checked her communication device. The conclave representatives are arriving. We should prepare for the delegation. Morgan nodded, understanding the responsibilities of her position. As they walked together toward the door, Nyla stopped suddenly. There's something you should know, she said. The conclave isn't just coming to discuss the Krovian incident. They're here to evaluate the Stellaris for an extended exploration mission beyond our known regions. Sounds important, Morgan remarked. It is, Nyla confirmed. And if approved, I've been offered permanent command of the vessel. Her gaze held his. I would need a chief systems officer, someone who understands both the ship and its crew. Someone innovative, adaptable, human. The implication was clear, and Morgan felt a surge of excitement at the prospect. Are you offering me a job, acting director? I'm offering you a future, Nyla corrected softly. One we would build together. Among the stars, Morgan considered how drastically his life had changed since that night in Pete's auto shop. From fixing cars to navigating alien politics, from solitude to finding connection across the vastness of space. I accept, he said simply, on one condition. Nyla raised an eyebrow. Which is? Morgan grinned. That we establish official protocols for human-Vesperian relationships. I think we're going to need them. Nyla's laughter was rare and beautiful, echoing in the observation deck as she pulled him close once more. I believe that can be arranged. Chief Officer Reed. As they sealed their agreement with another kiss, the Stellaris continued its journey through the cosmos. Beyond the transparent dome, stars gleamed like possibilities waiting to be explored. Together. Later, as the conclave representatives boarded the vessel and the crew prepared for a new chapter in the ship's mission, Morgan stood proudly beside Nyla on the command deck. His journey had begun with abduction and a mop, but it had led to something far greater, a place where he truly belonged, a purpose that challenged him, and a love that defied the boundaries of worlds. The Stellaris hummed around them, responsive to Morgan's unique connection with its systems and Nyla's steady command. Whatever lay ahead in the uncharted regions of space, they would face it as they had faced everything else, with innovation, courage, and the strength of their bond. For Morgan Reed, formerly of Earth, the greatest adventure wasn't being chosen for a cosmic purpose. It was discovering that sometimes the most extraordinary destinies begin with the most ordinary of tasks and end with finding home in the most unexpected of places.